Welcome to the PCC Treasurer's Training by Sarah Rogers, Parish Advisor for the Diocese of Chichester for Finance, Governance and Stewardship. This training has been designed for new parish treasurers who might not have been a bookkeeper or an accountant or a treasurer in a church institution before. Some of the things that we are going to cover is an outline of the role and end of year reporting, which is probably the busiest time of year for the parish treasurer. Reporting in general to your PCC, control mechanisms and good governance, advising your parish, which will include fund accounting, gift aid, listed places of worship in the VAT scheme, parochial fees, parish share, and a bit on energy bills, parish buying and the key differences, doing the bookkeeping or the treasurership for your parish rather than for an outside institution. On this slide, we can see some of the questions I get asked more regularly by new treasurers. So am I responsible? Am I allowed to be a treasurer? Am I alone in this? And am I personally liable? So as the treasurer, you don't need to have any specific qualifications. You don't need to be an accountant or a bookkeeper, but it does help if you have some financial acumen. What the treasurer does need to do is be able to disseminate the financial information to the PCC so that everybody around the table, no matter their level of financial literacy, is able to understand what the current position of the PCC is. You can't make any decisions as a PCC whether to do work, whether to hire a youth worker, whether to do more outreach, unless you know how much finance the PCC has available. So it's really important that that information can be disseminated in a way that people understand using charts, graphs. The treasurer is not responsible for making financial decisions alone, and they're not responsible for telling the PCC what to do. However, what you can do is advise on the current financial situation so that every trustee on the PCC can be involved in making those decisions. And with that in mind, it is every PCC member's responsibility, the finances of their parish. It is not solely a responsibility of the treasurer. So I started with end of year reporting because this is probably one of the busiest times in the parish treasurer's calendar. So at the end of the year, we run from January to the 31st of December. We follow the charity reporting and statement of recommended practice guidance on the Charity Commission website, which is how to prepare your accounts so that they're a true and fair record. And the idea with that is that it's trust and transparency for everybody involved in the charity, for our congregation members, people who might be considering giving to your PCC, grant funding bodies. So it's a true and fair reflective record of your current year. So anything over £25,000 according to the Charity Commission needs to be independently examined. That's trumped by our church representation rules that say all parishes, so all PCCs must have their accounts independently examined each year. Now, if you're under £250,000 turnover, you can do this on a receipts and payments basis, and your independent examiner does not need to be a qualified examiner. There's a list of qualified examiners on the Charity Commission website, so you can get an idea of what they're expecting from a qualified examiner. So once you go to over £250,000 turnover, you need to be on accrual accounting. Up to that point, you can pick whether you do receipts and payments and accruals. So £250,000 to £1 million turnover, your independent examiner has to be a qualified examiner, and anything over £1 million, you have to be professionally audited. Your independent examiner is appointed at the previous year's APCM. So if you've just started out in your parish, it's worth asking somebody else if they know who the independent examiner was who was elected at last year's meeting, or if not, get hold of a copy of the APCM minutes from the previous year. It's really important that you have an open conversation, probably at your standing committee or with your incumbent and your wardens, your secretary, so that you're aware the date they're planning to hold the APCM. And the reason for this is because your approved, signed and independently examined accounts must be on display in the church at least 7 days before the APCM. So if you're holding it on a Sunday morning, that would be the Sunday prior. In reality, a lot of parishes tend to put the information in church 2 weeks, if not a month before, so that the congregation members have time to read the reports and look at the accounts before the meeting. So after you've held your APCM, you need to email or post a copy of your reports and accounts to me, or post them to Church House. Via email is fine. We store them electronically anyway, so if you prefer to send them by email, that's absolutely fine. then you need to complete the Church of England portal. If you don't have a login and password for that, if you send me an email, we can set you up. That closes on the 28th of June, so you have a month after the last possible date you can hold your APCM, which is the 31st of May, to complete the online portal. And then finally, if your church is currently registered with the Charity Commission, you have a registered charity number. You also need a login for the Charity Commission portal, and your accounts need to be uploaded onto there by the 31st of October. It might be that somebody else in your parish has the login for the Charity Commission portal, because you do need to change your trustees each year. So the people that come off your PCC need to be removed, and the people that join at the APCM need to be added. Once that's done, then you can upload the accounts, but it might be that the admin in your parish or somebody else has access to that. So it is worth checking before you get close to the due date. So for the key tasks of the Treasurer, we use the acronym RACE. So record, advise, control, enact. And I'm going to go through each of these in the following slides. So recording income, it's much easier to get the information you need at the point when the funds come into the church bank account, rather than trying to go back at a later date and find the information. So where is it coming from? The giver's name, the giving platform or the funding body. What kind of income is it? Is it regular giving? Is it a one-off donation? You might have some grant funding, or it could be some trading income. And really importantly, what kind of fund is it going into? Is it money going into your unrestricted general church account, or is it going into a restricted fund of some sort? And of course, how much is the amount coming into the account? So recording expenditure. It's really important, like with the income, that you record who you're paying, so the supplier name, and what kind of spending it is. Usually our categories are defined by the Statement of Recommended Practice from the Charity Commission. You might have a few extra categories on your PCC for specific items. For example, if you run a cafe, if you have lunchtime concerts, that kind of thing. But it's important not to have too many categories, because it makes it difficult for the accounts to read. And as we saw before, one of the really important things is that you can explain to the PCC really easily where the money's coming in and where it's going out. Again, with your spending, if you record which fund it's coming from, so is it general fund or is it from a restricted fund? And this is really important, we'll come on to that. And obviously how much is going out of the PCC account. One question I get asked quite a lot is, should we be using spreadsheets or software? We do have some example template Excel sheets on the Diocese of Chichester website. There's a link at the end, and that you're welcome to download and use. And there's also lots of software out there that you can use, so Data Developments, Expense Plus, Xero, QuickBooks. A lot of parishes now are moving towards software. One of the reasons being that a lot of them now are cloud-based, so you can have several users log in from different locations. So you might have an off-site bookkeeper, but then your treasurer can also log in and run the reports for the PCC meeting. So it's just important to know for your church context what it is that you need. The spreadsheets are great. They also work absolutely fine. It's about keeping your record keeping up to date. But it just depends. Once you go past a certain number of entries, it's probably easier to be on a software if you have an awful lot going in and out of your church bank account. So next we're going to look at advising your PCC. So when you meet with your PCC, it's really important to give them some good information. So what's happened since the last meeting? You can summarise your income and expenditure by budget codes. How are you comparing to this year's budget? Are you over? Are you under? Is it just in some areas? Explain any anomalies that people might not necessarily pick up. Raise any questions that are worth considering by the PCC. And try to make it clear using charts, graphs, trends. But the most important thing is, what is the bottom line? For example, when the gas and electricity bills went up quite significantly, that was an anomaly. It was out of budget. And the bottom line was that perhaps you were going to move from a surplus budget to a deficit budget very quickly if a fixed contract for energy wasn't found soon. So that's the sort of information that you need to be passing to your PCC. So with quarterly reporting, it's sometimes good to give people the reports in a similar style to what you will present at the APCM. And this is because it gives people the chance to look at it throughout the year and to try to get to grips with the presentation. of the annual accounts. So break down the income and expenditure by budget line. There'll be a summary of receipts and payments, but there's also a summary of funds. And this is important so you can see if you're using your restricted funds, if you have a designated fund for some specific work, how much is left, how's the project doing, are we on budget? It's those sort of things that the PCC needs to know. You can discuss these at a standing committee beforehand if your PCC has one. And it's always good to distribute a little report in advance of the meeting. Sometimes you'll find that this might encourage questions that people are going to bring up at the PCC, and it means that you've got time to look into the background of certain statement lines or figures, rather than getting to the meeting on an evening and finding out that there's a question about one budget line but you're not exactly sure what the answer is. So do encourage people to ask questions in advance, even if you answer them at the PCC. And this slide is just an example of the summary of the financial receipts and payments. So people can quite clearly see what's come in, what your expenditure is and what your overall prediction is. You can also show the budget codes as well to show where they're over or where there's an underspend. So fund accounting is really key for our parishes, and it's important that you understand the different types of funds that there are. So the unrestricted is your general fund. So that's money that comes into the church account that doesn't have any restriction placed on it. And that forms part of your general unrestricted fund that you can use for the mission and ministry of the parish in any way that the PCC sees fit. What you can't do is put a restriction on these funds. What you can do is you can designate them. So say you wanted to put a small amount, say £5,000 to one side to be designated for work on the churchyard or for repair of a stained glass window, something like that. It's designated by PCC resolution. It forms part of your statement of funds, and then people can see how much money you put towards that project, and you can see it ticking down as you do the works or as you spend the money. Should you decide not to do whatever it is you've designated some funds for, so if you put some money aside to build a loo in the church but decide actually you're going to go down a different route, you can undesignate them in the same way with PCC resolution, and it just goes back into your general fund monies. So restricted funds are monies that are restricted at the point of donation. So this could be fundraising monies that are given for a specific item, so repair of a window, repair of the roof, hiring a youth worker, for example. It could be legacy money that's given with restriction, or it could be grant funding money that's given for something specific. And the idea is that you form these restricted funds on your statement of funds, and people can see how much money is available, and as you spend from these funds, you make sure that you're spending in line with the restriction, and when they go to zero, you put a note on your accounts to say that the restricted fund for the tower was entirely used up in repointing of the stonework of the tower, and therefore the restricted fund's now to zero, and it's now closed, and it comes off your accounts. And it's good for people to see what restricted funds you have available, because the Charity Commission states that you're supposed to spend them as soon as practically possible in the manner intended. So it's important that you know what the restriction is. Sometimes we can have a lot of restricted funds, the Smith Fund, the Jones Fund, and it's not always clear what the restriction is. So it's worth going back through the paperwork and having a look and just checking what the restrictions are. It is also possible now with the Charity Commission to apply to widen restrictions. So, for example, if you had a fund for repair of a stained glass window, which is in perfect condition, but the stonework around the window is in really poor condition to the point where it's threatening the security of the window, you could apply to widen the remit, saying, you know, the window is in great condition. However, if we don't repair the stonework, then the window is in danger of falling out and being damaged. And in that case, the Charity Commission might say, actually, we agree that you use some of these restricted funds for the window on the stonework immediately around the window. There's also two types of endowments that you might have. These are permanent and capital endowments. These are usually legacy donations. Permanent endowments means that you can spend the interest only on the endowment. You have to keep the capital, and capital endowments mean that you can spend both the original donation and the interest on it. Again, they come with a restriction, so it's worth looking at what the manner intended was on the restriction. If you have any endowments that are £25,000 or under, there is also a process now the Charity Commission's put in place since 2022 to help smaller charities release some of these funds that are held in endowments, because it is recognised that if you have a fund that's got very small capital in it, and the interest on that is actually quite small, that it might actually be better releasing the endowment to do more of the works, for example, if it was given for fabric works. So we need these funds for transparency. It's trust and transparency. It's so that people know that if they give money for a specific purpose, that's how we're spending it. And that's why we have these restricted funds. In an ideal world, it would be great if all of our donations were unrestricted into the general fund, but we know that some of them are not. And so it's important that we can show that we're using these funds in the right way to give people trust so that they will donate again to your PCC. So we tag them with a fund name. We carry them forward at the start of the year. And it's really important that we, in our reporting, we state the restricted fund balances so that people can see how much is left. Again, if you've got any restricted funds and you don't know what they're for, it is worth checking with your PCC secretary. There might be information in prior minutes, or in the parish office there might be some legacy information, or if you ran a specific fundraising campaign. It's worth noting that if you are going to run a fundraising campaign that is specific in nature, so for example to repair the church roof, that you do look at the guidance on the Charity Commission website, because there is a way of specifying how you're raising the funds. So we are raising £10,000 to repair the church roof. Anything that we receive over and above this amount will be used towards the fabric of the building. And in that way, if you raise more than you intend, it does mean that you can use the funds. So for example, if you were trying to raise £1,500 to repair a window, but you actually achieve £5,000, you run a really good campaign, you repair the window, you have a lot of funds left over. And if you haven't done that, then you are supposed to offer the funds back to the donors, or check with the donors if they would be happy, as you exceeded the amount you needed to be able to put it towards something else in the church. So it's worth thinking about the wording of fundraising campaigns just before you start them. So now we're going to look at controls. So internal financial controls. Some parishes still have a lot of cash coming through their churches. So you might have loose plate collections, wall boxes, votive candles, guidebooks sold at the back of church, collections for third parties like Christian Aid or Water Aid, something like that, or coffee donations. It's important that the people doing the counting for you are aware of the information that you need. So it's really good practice that you have two people counting the cash unrelated to one another. And there are some banking sheets on our website that you can use as an example, but you can also populate them with things that you might get regularly in your church when they're counting the cash. And the idea here is that you make it easy for the volunteers to know what kind of information it is that you need as the treasurer to know to allocate the funds correctly. So it's no good finding out that they banked 133.17. And that included, a third party collection, a loose plate collection that you're going to put towards your gift aid claim, coffee monies, votive candles, that sort of thing. You need it broken down into what kind of money it is coming in and exactly what it's for. And in that way, you can then correctly allocate it to the right codings. So with your expenditure, usually parishes have some stepped authorisation in place. So for example, sort of a £100, £200 limit that maybe the church wardens, the incumbent, the parish admin, the caretaker can authorise on a daily basis if they come in and there's, for example, a broken window or, a toilet overflowing, or you're out of coffee for the back of church, that sort of thing. Many standing committees have a £1,000 limit, so they can authorise minor repairs and minor works without needing to go through the PCC, and this just speeds up the process of having to wait for the next PCC meeting, although those items should be reported to the PCC when the next meeting occurs. And then obviously everything over £1,000 would need to go to the PCC for their approval. So when we're talking about expenses, it's always good practice to have evidence of any claims that people are making. So receipts for train tickets, bus tickets, if they've bought coffee, if they've bought craft items for Messy Church, if they've bought food for, you know, a soup group or something like that. It's really important that you have the receipts. And best practice is that two people check the expenses before they're paid out. And this is not to say that we think anybody's doing anything wrong, but it's giving yourself that degree of separation, that the person who's claiming the expenses is not the one signing them off or paying them, that somebody else has looked at them and agreed that they were spent in furtherance of mission at the church. With regards to conflict of interest, there's a video on the Charity Commission website, a 5-minute video on conflict of interest, which is really clear. In our churches, we do have an unusually high amount of conflicts of interest just for the nature of the way that we're made up. So we have an awful lot of intergenerational people on our PCC, sometimes husbands and wives, partners. We have people who are related to people in the congregation, or people who may work in the office or do paid employment for the parish. So it's just really important that where there is a conflict of interest, that it's noted to the chair. You decide what you're going to do about it, and then that's recorded. So for example, if you were talking about remuneration and a pay rise for your parish admin, and somebody on the PCC is related to that person, that they would step out of the meeting while that discussion takes place. You take the vote, agree whether or not to increase the wages of the admin, and it's noted that that person left the meeting at that point and then rejoined afterwards due to the conflict of interest. And in that way you can show that they've not been involved in the decision whether or not to increase the wages. So enacting. So it's important as a treasurer that you know about the different mechanisms for getting the finances to flow into your PCC account. You might not necessarily be responsible for all of these, but it's good to have an overview of how the money comes into the church. So the parish giving scheme is by far the most admin easy system to use. Your parish signs up, and then people sign up with the parish giving scheme to give a gift to your church on a monthly basis. This is paid out 100%, there's no fee, into your church bank account on a monthly basis, and any gift aid due is claimed again on a monthly basis. So it's actually better than doing a gift aid claim once a year, because you have that more regularity around your planned giving plus the gift aid throughout the year. You can also have people giving standing orders or direct bank payments, bank transfers directly into your bank account. It's really important that you go through, you identify the regular givers that do this and check their gift aid information, because while the parish giving scheme is responsible for checking the gift aid status of the givers that are signed up through the scheme, when it's coming directly into your bank account, it's something that you're responsible for as a PCC. So it's worth finding out who's giving in that manner and whether or not they're a gift aider. And the same thing is also true giving envelopes, finding out whether they are gift aiders or not. Most churches are moving away from giving envelopes, as we saw in the pandemic. If people don't come to church, then you don't get that regular giving. So it is better to be on some form of either standing order or the parish giving scheme. There are some direct debit schemes like Go Cardless. We don't recommend these because they come with a fee. So it's actually better if people set up their own standing orders or join the parish giving scheme. And in that way, you don't pay the fee. You can have one-off payment platforms such as a sum up device. And if you've got an interactive digital machine, then it might come through Sum Up and Give a Little, or even Just Giving is another fundraising platform that you could use to get some funds. Those card readers do take a small percentage, but it is worth having a digital device in your church. There's a lot of people now that don't carry cash. We're seeing the loose plate collections are decreasing. And anything under £30 on a digital device is considered part of your loose plate collection for gift aid status. So it's really worth having one, especially if you have a lot of footfall into your church. If you're in a tourist area on the South Downs Way, if you're by the coast, it really is worth having something quite prominent where people can just come in and tap a donation. We also promote easy fundraising in the diocese. If you go onto our website, you can sign up for easy fundraising as a parish. Once you're signed up, anybody that shops online that is signed up to easy fundraising can then donate to your church. And what happens is there's lots of commercial retailers such as Tesco, Waitrose, B&Q, Argos. And what happens is when you make a purchase online, You don't pay any more for what's in your basket, but it will come up and ask you if you're part of Easy Fundraising, if you'd like to donate to your charity that you've elected. You say yes. And once you've made your purchase, a percentage of what you've purchased is paid by the retailer to Easy Fundraising, and then that gets paid out to the charity. So you can earn, you know, sometimes 0.5%, 1%, 3%, 5%. So it depends. If you have people that shop a lot online, it can be really lucrative. We do have one church in the diocese, which is fairly small. They signed up to Easy Fundraising, and one of the ladies passed the code out for the church to her extended family, grandchildren, people that shop online on a regular basis, sort of grocery shopping at Tesco's. The church regularly gets sort of £200 a month as a free donation to the church. My parish also signed up for this, and we're regularly getting around £30 to £40. So it is really worth doing. It's a social enterprise to encourage people to shop with different retailers, because there's a charitable element to it, and it's free money for the church. You don't pay anything for it. The end consumer doesn't pay anything for it. It's a charitable endeavour between the retailer and Easy Fundraising. So with the gift aid, the GAD small donation scheme, you can claim loose plate qualifying collections of up to £8,000, which can be worth up to £2,000 per year for your parish. Any small donation of £30 or less on an electronic device can be included in your loose plate collection. But it's really important to note that you need to make a matching gift aid claim in order to claim for the loose plate collection in any gift aid tax year. And the idea is that if you are claiming the full £8,000, you need to have 10 times the amount of charitable gift aid claimed. So £800 to claim the full £8,000. If you have £4,000 of eligible loose plate collections, you need £400 in matching gift aid claims. Regular giving and one-off giving counts towards this. What doesn't count is your PGS donations, where they have already had the gift aid claimed from HMRC. So it's quite important that if you're a parish with quite a lot of loose plate collections, that you do keep one or two people who pay by backs or standing order directly into your bank account, or if you have a couple of envelope givers that are reluctant to move, that's absolutely fine, because you can use those people as the matching gift aid claim. You need to hold your gift aid records for 7 years. Up to that point, HMRC can come and ask to see any of the records that support any of the claims. After that point, you can dispose of them. It's important that gift aid declarations are kept up to date, and that you go through and make sure you have them for anybody who gives by bank transfer, standing order directly into your bank account, numbered envelopes, any cheque donators, any people that regularly give large one-off donations. If you check if they're a gift aider, if they are and they haven't completed the form, you just get them to sign the declaration, and then you know you can make the claim on their behalf. Do keep up to date and make your annual claims. You can only go back up to 4 years if you fall behind. And also, if the giver's status changes, then you're ineligible for claiming their gift aid. So if they become deceased, or if they swap from being a gift aider to a non-gift aider, then you can't backdate their claim and claim their gift aid. So it's really important to keep up to date with gift aid. It can be quite a lucrative source of income to parishes, especially if you have a lot of generous donations. So the listed places of worship scheme. I'm still coming across a lot of parishes that don't know about this. So this is the Department of Media and Culture have a fund up until the end of March 2025 currently, where you can claim VAT back on eligible works on listed places of worship. After this time, from April onwards, it's a new government. We're not sure how the fund's going to look, whether it will change, whether it will be funded in the same way. As soon as we have more information, I will put it out in the PCC members newsletter. So invoices must be claimed within 12 months of the date of the invoice. The minimum claim is £500 of eligible invoices. You can group several invoices together if you don't have an invoice that's £500 after the first invoice in the 12-month period of £500. Each eligible invoice has to be £1,000. Again, you can group them together, and that is the total cost of the invoice or the invoices together, not the cost of the VAT. So check your invoices against a list of eligible works. There's a link at the end of this slide deck where you can have a look. It's stonework, stained glass windows, roofs, guttering. You know, there's a lot of eligible works on there. that you can claim the VAT back on. You can also claim on professional fees, so for your architects, surveyors, if you've had any surveys done to do with any work. One of the things that is ineligible is your quinquennial report, architects fees. You can't claim the VAT back on that, and of course there's no VAT on faculty fees, so you don't get VAT back on that. It takes about 6 weeks. You do it on an online portal. As long as the invoice goes in on the day of the 12-month date of invoice, they will still look at it and come back to you within the time frame, and it's usually an email response and then a backs payment directly into your bank account. So parochial fees, this is the wedding and funeral fees. So this is set every year by General Synod in November. We get the fees around December time for the following year, and they run for the calendar year, so they run from January to December. It's really important as the treasurer that you know what's taken place and exactly how it's taken place. And it's much easier to do that at the time than it is to go back over the records at the end of the year and try to work out what type of funerals and things have happened. So when you get a payment from an undertaker or a wedding couple, they will give you one cheque. And within that amount, there will be an income amount for the PCC, and there will be a liability portion, which is for the Diocesan Board of Finance. So the fees are split between the two bodies. So it's really important that you know when it comes into the church bank account as one cheque from an undertaker, for example, or a wedding couple, what the portion is, and correctly attribute it to each one. If it all goes into income, then it can be quite difficult to unpick it later. So the idea is that you make a return to the diocese at the end of every quarter, so end of March, June, September and December. If you have a nil return and you don't have any weddings or funerals, there's a nil return document on our website. Please do send this back in, because we will then close off that quarter for you. Otherwise it looks like an open quarter and we're waiting for a quarterly return for you. So you need to use the tables to find out the correct fee. So this is usually all arranged by the priest or the parish admin, whoever books the weddings and the funerals in your church, and they liaise with the people taking the services, and then they get the fees in. But it's important that you know exactly what's been charged, so you know the makeup of the PCC income and the diocesan portion. So for example, whether it was a funeral service in church, whether it was a crematorium, whether there was a burial of ash, whether there was a burial at graveside, all of these things incur different fees. So it's really important that you know exactly what took place and exactly what line on the fee table that you're looking at. So use the table to find the correct fees, and then you make a payment to the diocese for any liability portions that you might have for funerals or weddings that took place in the prior quarter. If you're not sure when your church or your parish last returned quarterly fees, you can let me know via email and we'll double check the system for you. It's also important to note that if you have retired clergy or PTO priests taking services in your parish, that the fee is slightly different. So the fee that's charged to the wedding couple or for the funeral is exactly the same, but the breakdown is slightly different. So the diocesan portion gets split 80% and 20%, 80% for the retired priest and 20% for the diocese. And so that is in lieu of the fact that they are not stipendiary clergy in parishes, and so they're not already receiving a stipend for what they do, and so the PTO priest gets the 80%. There is a quick table on our website that splits the fees out for you on the 80-20% split. So just note whether it was your regular clergy taking the service or whether it was PTO stepping in, and then you make that payment split. So you make a payment directly to the retired priest and then a payment to the diocese as part of your quarterly fees that you return to us. So I wanted to talk about parish share, because this is probably the largest single expense on any PCC set of accounts. So you'll hear a lot of language around parish share, pledge or PMC, which is parish ministry costs. The way that it's worked out is we take the stipends of priests plus any associated costs, so pension, national insurance, continual training, housing, curate training, and this is added together with an allowance for vacancies within the diocese, and that's the parish ministry costs, and that is then divided by the parishes within the Diocese of Chichester. So your parish share is your parish's share of the parish ministry costs, and that will depend on whether you have a fully stipendiary priest, a house for duty, part-time priest, or in fact if you have more than one priest in your parish, you might have a priest and a curate or a priest and an associate. So the share is the local level context for your parish, and what we hope is when you get that from your deanery treasurers in the autumn, you can come and listen to the autumn deanery meetings about how the budget has been put together, and that you take that back to your PCC and prayerfully you think about how generous your PCC can be towards the parish ministry costs and your share of those costs, and that forms your parish pledge. And your pledge is what you deliver to us via your deanery treasurer. So they will collect them all usually in December, and they will pass them back to the diocese. So we know how much every parish is pledging, and then we can arrange the direct debits, all the payments to cover those pledges. Currently the diocese is running a deficit budget. It was 1.5 million. This has been reduced to 750,000 for 2025. The first round of those savings came from church house and central diocesan costs. The following 750,000 will either need to be found through increased pledges from parishes for 2025 or a reduction in the number of clergy, so that we're able to balance the books. And the idea is that although it's an average, where parishes have surpluses and indeed lots of unrestricted reserves, it is hoped that some parishes are more generous and can pay more than the parish ministry costs. And the idea is that allows another parish in the household of faith within the Diocese of Chichester to be supported in paying their ministry costs from parishes who are more affluent. So just a bit on energy bills, because I still come across parishes that aren't aware that they are eligible for 5% charity VAT on energy bills. So that is gas, electric and oil. It is worth checking your bills to make sure you're on the correct rate. I would check if you have hall buildings, church buildings with separate bills. If you have the same supplier, check both the electric and the gas, because it's not always correctly applied. If you find you're on a 20% VAT rate on any of your bills, contact your supplier. They'll ask you to fill out a declaration, and you can then go on to the 5% rate. Some people will go back and they will refund you the difference in the VAT rate, some for 6 months, some to the start of the contract. It just depends on your energy supplier. So the sooner you notice, the better it is for the parish. It's also worth recognising that if you shop around for the best tariff and you move your energy supply, you will need to fill out the declaration each time with the new supplier. It doesn't transfer from one to the other. You can use a broker, you can use online websites, you can also use parish buying in their energy basket, and they will look for the cheapest supply. I think they do it every year in April and October, and it's usually the cheapest green energy on the market at the point when they negotiate the energy basket. So it is worth getting in contact with them and seeing if there's something they can do for you. They also sell things like digital devices for churches. They're usually around 10% cheaper than if you bought it from the supplier directly, so a pay as or a collect in or a GWD device. And there's lots of other things on there that they've negotiated as well that you might find interesting for your parish. It is worth shopping around, because sometimes it's not the cheapest place that you can find to buy something, but the idea is that by buying en masse for the Church of England, parishes get a better deal. So it is worth checking if you're looking to make a purchase. So how is it different from bookkeeping or being a treasurer elsewhere? So fund accounting, which we've been through, this offers the trust and transparency to our donors and ensures that they want to donate with us again. Threshold for accrual accounting, which is 250,000. Our reporting procedures are sometimes more strict, but this is as we're offering best practice across all parishes, again for the transparency and the trust that it gives our donors. Gift aid tracking, we're eligible for the loose plate collection GAD scheme, which a lot of other charities don't have the advantage of. Dealing with volunteers, this is probably the most difficult part of being a treasurer. I often find if you can explain to people the value of the information that you're requesting, it's not to make things more difficult or take longer, but the value of what the information is that you need, then you'll often find that volunteers come on board and will work happily. We also have a lower resource base, so the office space, the tech setup, sometimes the systems that we use to do our accounting. So if you have any questions, please do get in contact. You can email me or give me a call, and I can go through anything that wasn't clear in the presentation or any other questions it might throw up. And as you're working through being treasurer for your parish, thank you for doing that. If you come across more questions as and when they arise, such as fees for funerals and you're not sure what to charge or something like that, do get in touch. Please also keep watching and flick past this last slide, as the next one has all of the links on it. So this one has some signposting. There's a record keeping document at the top which is called Keep or Bin. This is a useful parish record document that tells you how long you need to keep items for, and once the time period has lapsed, whether you need to send them to the county records office or whether you can dispose of them. There's Church of England guidance for treasurers on parish resources. Parish Resources is a national website that has a lot of information for parishes and can be really helpful. The parish buying website that we've discussed earlier for energy bills and for digital devices. The Chichester Diocese guidance for treasurers. There's lots of information on our website on end of year reporting, bookkeeping. There is Excel sheets that you can use as templates and templates for charity SORP reporting. If you can't find what you need, and you're looking for something specific and you can't locate the document, do ping me an email. I'll hopefully be able to find it for you. HMRC rules for the gift aid scheme, and at the bottom there is the Department for Media and Culture, the listed places of worship. That's where you can find out the eligibility of the works that you might have undertaken and how to make a claim.